At long last, we have come to the true ending of the Smallville story. The final 3 volumes of Smallville Season 11. Are they as epic as the first volumes? Do they bring everything to a good ending and a good conclusion? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my theological review spoiler talk for Smallville Season 11, the final 3 volumes, 7 through 9. So the question I posed is it good? Is it epic? I mean, I thought the beginning was really epic. The middle was pretty good, a lot of good stuff in there. But this is it. This is where the Smallville storyline is going to come to an end. So does it do it in an epic fashion? And my answer is yes. I'm giving volumes 7 through 9 a solid A. There really is just so much good stuff here. But let me just kick this off by saying the Smallville-verse Crisis on Infinite Earths is a million times better than the Arrowverse Crisis on Infinite Earths. Arrowverse had a good idea, bringing Brandon Routh back as the Christopher Reeve Superman, continuing that Superman Returns story, you know, Batman 1989, little throwbacks here and there, bringing all these things in the time. Like, it was a good idea, it was a good setup, with some pretty poor execution. I mean, the Smallville Clark with no powers, they killed off the Brandon Routh Superman, like, right in the first part to have the Lex Luthor weirdo take his spot. It, like, wasn't my favorite execution of a pretty cool setup. But I think that Smallville Crisis on Infinite Earths set the appropriate expectations, and then it met the expectations that it set. And I think they did a good job taking everything they've built up on and bringing it all together for this epic final DC battle. It was incredible. One of the great things about it is, first off, in Volume 7, we get Green Lantern, and it's John Stewart Green Lantern. But what I like about this unique take is it takes us back to 2 years ago. Everything keeps going back to that Season 9 finale. Why? It was freaking awesome. It is one of the best finales that Smallville had. I'm just throwing that out there. It's one of the best. So it keeps coming back to that, but it is a very interesting storyline. Now, what's interesting about it is, after Clark takes that blue dagger into his chest and Zod ascends, we get a picture of Argo. We get a picture of New Krypton as they all just arrived. And up in the sky, they see a sign in the heavens, a flame bird, giving them a sign that this is it. This is their new home, and it's a good omen. What it really is, it is the Green Lantern ring of Sector 2813. What I think is cool about this is it gives us an interesting Green Lantern history. Like Tomar-Re, he was the Green Lantern to protect Krypton, and he died as that planet fell. And that's the ring that Clark Kent inherits. I love that. So very interesting history to that ring. And as soon as life begins to populate Argo, the ring notices that and goes, oh, we need a Green Lantern for this sector. And as it went to select a Green Lantern there, here's something interesting. Because the inhabitants of Argo, they're clones coming out of that sphere, the ring couldn't pick one of them. So it took it 2 years to fly all the way to where Earth is, but it selected Clark Kent, Kal-El of Krypton, to be the Green Lantern of Sector 2813. It was a lot of fun to see Clark get the ring, to see Lois's reaction to Clark having the ring. Like, she's on the phone with Email Hamilton, like, okay, it's making, like, ghost things in the air. What do we do? And Clark tried to get it off, and he threw it, and it came right back like Thor's hammer, you know? It just came right back to him, so he couldn't get rid of it. What's really cool is John Stewart, who is the present Green Lantern, gets notified to help train Clark and walk him through it. And Clark really doesn't like this idea that he is a sentient being, and this was thrust upon him. Because he's clear in who he is, he's clear in his destiny, and he's clear in his mission. So being a Green Lantern of the sector where Argo is has nothing to do with that. In fact, he knows from going to the 31st century that he has no contact with Argo until he travels to the 31st century. So he's like, I know for a fact this is not my job. We need to get this ring off me. And John Stewart's all soldier-like, no, you're a soldier now. You're just going to follow orders. This is who you are. And Clark is like, I think you're looking at this wrong. And so Clark does put some doubt into John Stewart's mind, but the good kind. Like, he's asking him serious questions like, is this really the best way to go to force other sentient life to have to join? Wouldn't it be better if they had a choice? So questions like that, not to doubt Jon Stewart's mission, but in some of the execution of how that mission comes about. So it was very cool, these conversations between Clark Kent and Jon Stewart. It also gives us some Green Lantern history, how Jordan did exist in the Smallville universe. But you have Parallax, who took him over, and he was compromised and then turned on the Green Lantern Corps, and Parallax defeated the Green Lantern Corps. It's all really interesting as they dive into this will and fear, and how fear neutralizes will. And so fear is a neutralizing agent that stops will dead in its tracks. So they deal with all of that and dive into all of that. So it does a really good job. And I love the Green Lantern Corps. I love Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart. I love the Green Lantern stories. I love Green Lantern Earth 1, Volume 1 and 2. So it's so cool to get the Smallville universe version of Green Lantern and what's been going on in that universe. Now, something that was left unclear to me is how Alan Scott fit into this Smallville version of everything. I mean, we got as far as there was some sort of loophole. Like, he found some sort of loophole where he wasn't attached to the core, but he had the lantern battery and he had the ring. And so if I missed something, let me know in the comments, but to me, it feels like it was left kind of in that mysterious region, which on the one hand is cool, but on the other hand, I mean, come on. When Clark was sending out a distress call, it came into the battery of Alan Scott's lantern that was in display at the JSA museum. So it's like, give me info about this. I want to know more about this guy and whatever loophole allowed him to be what he was. But we didn't really dive deep into that. What we did dive into was actually pretty cool, because when they found out Parallax was still alive and that there was some sort of weird bad deal going on, Jon Stewart and Clark fly out to where Parallax is and they face him. So it's very cool to have Clark Kent facing Parallax, and Parallax vomits yellow lantern rings and he shoots them towards Earth, Clark's adopted planet, because it's a planet ridden with fear. And yes, it goes all over the planet and gives people yellow rings, but the best part is how it goes straight for Gotham and it goes straight for Arkham frickin' Asylum. So we get to see the likes of Bane and Poison Ivy and so many classic Batman villains wearing yellow lantern rings. And so you got Batman and Nightwing doing the best that they can to hold it off, and so Clark comes to help them, while Clark leaves Jon Stewart alone, believing Jon Stewart can handle Parallax, while Clark goes to save Gotham City. Jon Stewart, the doubt that Clark kind of fed into him, Parallax uses that to tap into Jon Stewart's fear, gives him a yellow ring, and takes him over and compromises him, which is very interesting. But as Clark is battling yellow lanterns in Gotham, you have Batman and Nightwing, and they're hopeless. They can't do anything. They're tied up by yellow energy from Poison Ivy, and Batman's yelling, "Come on, Clark! The green ring isn't really helping here." So Clark goes, "Well, good thing I'm more than just a ring." And it's like he flexes, and he breaks the green energy power off of him, and because it's being neutralized by fear. So rather than taking his stand in the ring, he takes his stand in his will and who he is and who he knows himself to be. Then, of course, Jon Stewart arrives, compromised by Parallax. And again, great moment where it's Clark that brings the will back into Jon. It's actually very cool because, again, you get to see Clark's heart. Clark knows who he is, and he's speaking hope and faith into the heart of Jon Stewart. So what you see is green begin to fill Jon's one hand, go up through his shoulder, his body, until he's the Green Lantern again. So you get to see the hope of Superman put on display in such an epic moment. So the whole Green Lantern volume to me is very cool, and it was a great way to introduce to us the Green Lantern Corps in the Smallville universe. And it's a small core at this time. Because of Parallax, most of the Green Lantern are defeated. There's just a handful left. But it's still a very cool way to get to know the core, see Jon Stewart, see where we are in that history inside the Smallville universe. Now, this next volume, Chaos, it's a very interesting volume to me because there's two stories going on, and I like both stories. Story one, you have Lois and Clark. And so in Antarctica, down in the South Pole, Ted Cord of Cord Industries and his partner, they got this whole particle accelerator thing going. They're trying to do these experiments, and Lex Luthor's there, and he messes with something, and it opens up the Bleed, which is this doorway to the multiverse. And Lois and Clark get swept up in it and end up on a couple different Earths, actually, seeing the monitors and what they're capable of. So Lois and Clark are going through their own set of chaos. While Lois and Clark are gone, Earth is having some chaos because of this weird purple diamond that's not possessing people, but I guess alpha waves, and it influences people, whatever. They are now claiming to be this character called Eclipso, which I don't know much about that character. But they're all saying, I am the wrath of God. So it's like this weird virus spreading from this diamond that is turning people into supervillains claiming to be the wrath of God. So they got these incredible powers, and as it spreads, like this city is just being attacked by more and more normal people turned into the wrath of God, or Eclipso. And so that's an interesting storyline. Our Earth is in chaos, and then you have Lois and Clark in the chaos that actually has to do with the storyline. Which is why I kind of feel like this Purple Diamond issue should be its own issue instead of intertwined with what's going on with Lois and Clark. The point is that this whole volume is filled with chaos. So when Lois and Clark get sucked through this vortex, this experiment going wrong on purpose by Lex Luthor, by the way, they end up on an Earth that is being destroyed by the monitors. What I like about this is it's Lois and Clark seeing the full threat that is coming their way. So here they are in Metropolis on another Earth, and it's empty. And they're flying around, they can't find life. You know, you got monitor ships in the air, and then they find this church that has a group of people praying. And you have that Earth's version of Jimmy Olsen, it sounds like, which is actually kind of cool. And then you have that version of Lois Lane. And one of the things they find when they first get there is like almost crucified up on the Daily Planet orb is Mr. Majestic, who is this world's Superman. And the Lois on this world is crushed that her Mr. Majestic is killed and gone. And in fact, the whole world is crushed by the death of Mr. Majestic. The whole world is crushed by the death of all the metahumans and heroes that were standing up for them and fighting because they lost. So what hope do the mortals have? So they've come into this church just to prepare to die. So Lois, our Lois, stays in the church to try to give some hope to the people, while our Clark flies around the city and finds out that the Manhunters are being powered by the Bleed, and realizes what the monitors are doing. They release the Manhunters so that people like Clark and all the heroes are distracted fighting the Manhunters, and as Lois is learning in the church, one ship was positioned over Australia, one ship was positioned over Washington, D.C. on opposite sides of the Earth, and they did something to the Earth's core, which reminds me of Man of Steel. That's exactly what Zod did with the World Engine. So that was really interesting to me to see that and see what they were doing to distract the heroes and how they were bringing about the endings of these Earths. And so that's what this is about. This is about Clark discovering that. So he finds the fortress that Mr. Majestic had, the Fortress of Solitude, and a Jor-El with emotions. And it's funny because Clark, he goes into the fortress and Jor-El goes, "This is an imposter," and he freezes that Clark so Clark can't hear this conversation. But it's funny because this Jor-El is grieved, like he's having emotions, and he's sad that his Clark is dead. And Lois is like, "Oh, Clark, I wish you could only hear this," because, you know, the Jor-El on Clark's Earth didn't really have emotions. Here's a Jor-El with emotions, poor Clark not hearing it. They're trying to use the fortress to get back to their Earth. And so this Jor-El doesn't have a lot of experience with that. So as the Earth they're presently on is about to be destroyed in the Bleed, Jor-El says, "Take me with you." He turns the fortress into a crystal and just randomly sends them to an Earth. So they go to another Earth. And this one is just destroyed. It's like, it's still there. There's like a whole planet or something crashed into it like it's apocalypse. But it's like gone. And so it's like the monitors left because there's nothing left here to decimate. So it's this wasteland. But while they're there, Clark hears this noise and discovers, bum, bum, bum!
Darkseid.
I wish we got more time with this, because this feels like an interesting setup, and there's no season 12. So if you know anything about, I guess, New Genesis. Now, as much as I love DC Comics, I don't know tons of stuff about New Genesis, but this is what this is building. And so we have a Darkseid who is broken by the monitors. What's interesting is Darkseid expresses, "You're not seeing another version of me in another world. No, I am the one and only Darkseid in all of the multiverse. It's only me." And then he talks about how, I guess, he just sent a wraith of himself. I don't know, like, it was unclear to me, but interesting at the same time. So Clark did battle Jor-El in this, or Jor-El, he battled Darkseid in this spear form, but then Darkseid even says,
"Well, good thing for your sake, you didn't face me in my full power."
So it's weird because this is really interesting, and Clark makes a deal with him. "Allow me to escape this planet. Allow me to get on one of the monitor ships without you interfering, and he gives Darkseid the crystal for the fortress, which is what Darkseid uses to create New Genesis. Like I said, this was like an amazing start to a storyline that never goes anywhere because there is no season 12. So it is done well. It is fascinating, but it leaves me wanting. Like, I want to know more. There's things I don't understand about this Darkseid appearance, and I want to get into it more, but there is no season 12 to do it. So it's actually really cool because Clark, does get on this ship of the Monitors as they enter the bleed, because they're about to go to our Earth and begin their destruction of our Earth. And what's cool about it is when they're discovered, they discover different types of Monitors that live on that ship. And Clark engages them in battle, and they're pretty freaking tough, and they knock him out, and then they sentence Clark and Lois to death, and Clark says, Lois, trust me, let them throw me out to the bleed first. They throw Clark out into the bleed, he flies around and comes back, rips his way back into the ship, allowing the bleed to fill the ship. Lois gets on a lifeboat, Clark rides the lifeboat, and they come back to our Earth. It's actually a very intense sequence, and it's very well written. It's very cool how they talk about the bleed, how even Clark can't survive in it, even if he can survive longer than other people. You see it burn through his outfit, it's burning through him. So there is some very interesting things. The other most interesting thing is in our world, Antarctica, Lex Luthor, had figured out how to use that communicator to try to communicate to Lex Luthor's on multiple Earths. You remember that? He never heard back from any Lex Luthor. I guess they're all selfish. So this Lex decides, okay, and use this particle accelerator to open the gateway and communicate with the Monitors. So he comes in. And one of the things I forgot to say that was cool, after the whole Yellow Lantern battle, right? Yellow Lanterns all over Gotham and all over that stuff. It ends with Lex Luthor with a bunch of Yellow Lantern rings. So on Earth, he kind of has his own personal Yellow Lantern Corps security, and they are his people. And I wish we got more on this, because it is interesting, because when Lex is at this particle accelerator, he's all peaceful at first, then he calls in his Yellow Lantern Corps, and his Yellow Lanterns force Ted Kord and his partner to, I guess, make some tweaks so that he can communicate with these Monitors. And he says, hey, how about instead of you using the bleed and destroying our Earth, why don't you reboot our Earth? Now that's interesting, because if you're talking comic books and you're talking comic book movies, what do you think would be a comic book character's worst fear? Being freaking rebooted. How many times has Spider-Man and Batman and Superman and all these heroes, Fantastic Four, been rebooted on the big screen now? We're a little bit tired of reboots, right? And I thought it was funny they even use that language, rebooted, because as somebody reading a comic book who loves comic book movies, that really hit me in this kind of breaking the fourth wall way of, I guess that really would be their tremendous fear. And then, of course, the Yellow Lantern Corps turns on Lex Luthor because they're drunk on the power that they have, which Lex Luthor is prepared for that and uses the ring he had on under his glove and self-destructs their rings and then self-destructs his ring. On the one hand, this is disappointing because I wanted to see more of that. Like, what would it be like, Lex the head of a Yellow Lantern Corps on Earth? And we only got a short little taste of that. But then again, we are in the finale of Season 11, the final season of the Smallville story. So it does make sense to conclude it pretty fast, and I think they used it well. I wish I got just a wee bit more, but it was really interesting. Well, we've made it to Volume 9, the season finale of Season 11, though I would assume this is more of a series finale. And the way it ended, it had a great final note to it. So it really does, I think, end in a good, strong, emotional place that I really liked. And it's one of the reasons I just believe the Smallville-verse version of Crisis on Infinite Earths was way better than what they did on Arrowverse. And because this is so much better, there really was no need to include the Smallville Clark Kent in the Arrowverse. So what's really cool is Lois Lane comes into Earth on that lifeboat from that ship, and along with her comes all the other Monitors on their lifeboats and their ships coming through the bleed. So they didn't stop them, they just took out one ship. So the rest of the ships are coming in to put into plan, or to put into motion their new plan. So we saw how they would go over DC or Australia, and then they would send out the red rays, which is the bleed, and just decimate and destroy. Well, now they're going to send up these blue rays to reboot, to break everything down to this molecular level and rebuild it with a new history, to the history that they want to write with it, and see how they feel about that. So it's very cool. And the other thing interesting is they do something interesting with Tess Mercer. So you have Tess Mercer, who's been living as kind of this mind outside of a body in the computers of Watchtower. She basically is Watchtower. And so what we've been seeing is Oliver Queen, he prints new arrows and weapons and armor with this amazing, super fast, incredible 3D printer and Watchtower. And so eventually Tess decides to do that and becomes the Smallville version of Red Tornado. But that comes towards the end, and again, you have all these great DC characters, but it was a good conclusion to Tess, so that now she's not just a mind trapped inside of a computer, she can now have a 3D printed superpowered body in our world, and that's a really cool way to end her story, I think, in a satisfying way. So that was kind of fun to get into, and here's part of the plan. Lois and Lex have to go on the Monitor ships because, you know, Lex being the genius that he is, when he tapped into their communique, of course he mapped their ships and the blueprints and got a skeleton key to open the door. So of course they're going to need Lex Luthor. And because this is such a massive threat, yeah, they need to figure out how to trust Lex Luthor. And it's cool because, you know how Lex Luthor kind of has that weird kryptonite suit that he has? He has that built in this Smallville universe. Don't know when he built it, but he has it, and it's kind of cool that he has it. So the idea is very Independence Day-like. Lex and Lois are going to get on one of the Monitor ships, and they're going to upload a virus. That way, through the virus, Watchtower can take control and put everything back to normal, reconstitute what has been broken down back to normal as if nothing had happened. So this is their plan. Heroes engage the Manhunters, Lex and Lois go engage the Monitors, and of course Lex betrays him because Lex wants to rebuild the world in his image. But they double-cross Lex and place the virus in his suit. So it's actually pretty cool to see these heroes smart enough to even double-cross Lex. So we do have Lex, true to his character, trying to double-cross everybody. Everybody already prepared for that and double-crossing him. So there is a lot of fun elements in that. And then I love it because Clark has this epic speech. And basically, it is a speech against reboots. We will protect our continuity. Yes, they use that phrasing. And I'm like, amen. I didn't go through 10 years of Smallville and all of these volumes of season 11 to have you freaking rebooted. So to see this Clark Kent with that passion giving a rousing speech to, I mean, look at this picture. That is a ton of heroes that throughout all 10 seasons and season 11 included, they have built up these heroes. They even bring in my favorite Blue Lantern, Saint Walker, and they kill him. I was sad when he died. And then the Blue Lantern ring went to Barbara flippin' Gordon, and she became a Blue Lantern. So it was worth it that one of my favorite characters died, and then one of my new favorite characters became a Blue Lantern. I thought that was awesome, and again, a unique Smallvillian take. One of the sad things is a Monitor ship crashes down and destroys Watchtower, the building that somehow Jimmy miraculously afforded and bought for Chloe that made Watchtower possible. I actually did feel a tug on my heart just looking at the comic book panel of that tower collapsing. I was incredibly sad, especially since Chloe was in there pregnant, but that's when Tess decided to print her body. She came out as the Red Tornado and got Chloe out of there and saved Chloe and, you know, her baby. She's like 9 months pregnant, ready to burst at this point. So it's awesome that Red Tornado, Tess Mercer, saved Chloe. And then this battle ensues. And look, this is one of my favorite parts. The Monitors realize if we really want to destroy this Earth, if we want to reboot it, we have to destroy this Earth's heart. Its heart is Superman. So they release this Omega villain out there, and Superman is fighting this Omega villain because nobody else can, and I love it, because even Wonder Woman, she's like, Clark, take off the mittens, like take off the nice gloves, and Clark's like, yes, and he comes down and boom, this major shockwave, and as that happens, the Omega guy's like, target me, and hit it. And they hit all the blue rays onto Clark to break him down and reboot him. And it's frightening, actually, when this is happening. And it does a good job, because you know in Season 10, in the finale, how it burned Lex Luthor's memories out, and we're watching those memories vanish. Something similar happens, only this time it's more emotion, because I'm tired of it, man. I don't like episodes where Clark loses his power, or his memory, or all that junk anymore, and after 10, now 11 years, it's like, you can't take him away. But there's a reason the Green Lantern ring selected him in Volume 7. His will is so strong that he would not let his identity be taken. He said over and over, I am Kal-El of Krypton. Then he stopped. I am Clark Kent. And he clung to his identity. He rooted himself firmly in it, and he would not be removed. This storm was striking him, but because his feet were firmly rooted on the bedrock, he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt who he was, and he wouldn't let it go. And because of that, the enemy failed to destroy him. And I think that's an incredibly powerful picture of real life. We do need to know who we are and be rooted firmly in our identity. The best and strongest way is to be rooted in who we are in Christ. Jesus told this story, and I've said it many times on this channel, but it fits perfectly right here. Jesus said, the one who does not listen to his words is like the foolish man who built his house on the sand, who did not dig deep, who did not get to that bedrock, but just built their house on the sand, because the storms will come. And when the storm and the rain came, that house collapsed. But Jesus said, the one who does build their life on my words and does what I say is like the wise man who builds their house on the bedrock, because the storms and the rain still come, but that house remains standing. And so by Clark having his identity firm, and that's what Smallville was, it was 10 years of him questioning, who am I? 10 years of discovery, 10 years, and he came out refined and purified. What I love about Smallville season 11 is the Smallville Superman is a Superman who is clear-headed. He knows who he is. He knows his mission. He knows his heart. He knows his identity, because he knew it so well. When this full brunt of an attack came against him, he stood his ground firm, and it could not defeat him. We can be rooted firmly in Jesus and who he is and our identity in him. And when the enemy throws his fiery darts at us, we hold up that shield of faith to quench those darts. That to me is a picture of what we saw with this Superman. He knew who he was and he held firm. And it was this powerful scene. And so they defeat the Monitors. And Clark, who wanted a zero body count war on both sides. And the reasons people died is because Lex Luthor betrayed him and killed a couple of the Monitors. Otherwise, Clark, firm in his heart and what he wanted, did not kill even in this war. And so they found ways to imprison them, and they could figure out what to do with them. And so it's very interesting, Clark doing everything he can to even give them a chance at life, but knowing he has to save our world. All of that's incredibly interesting. But Chloe goes into labor. And this scene actually tugged at my heart because, she had the baby, and she and Oliver are leaving the hospital, and she's just talking about how she wished she had family there. And you know what makes me sad is we know what happened to Chloe's mom, but what happened to her dad? I mean, he was there, he was around, he's in several episodes of Smallville, and then eventually he's just not mentioned anymore, he doesn't exist anymore. He wouldn't come to the birth of his grandchild? Are you freaking kidding me? Oliver can fly him from wherever! There's no explanation as to where this man even is. But here you have them talking about family, and Oliver's like, haven't you realized yet? And she looks up, and in the lobby is Batman and Wonder Woman and Superman and Lois Lane and hero after hero after hero. And it is full of the DC heroes in normal clothes standing in the hospital lobby. And Clark is excited to hold his little nephew. And Chloe says, we gave him a name. And we figured a name has to be something important. What this child should aspire to be, and should aspire hope, and, just amazing speech. And Clark goes, well, what's his name? And she just looks at him, tears in her eyes, and says, Jonathan. And so you have this shot with Clark with tears in his eyes, and it's just like, oh, it's good. It is so good. And so you have this great ending again between Lois and Clark, and Lois wants to go skydiving. And so they have the Superman the movie flying, where they're flying kind of like this apart, only she's wearing a parachute. And he pulls her close for a kiss when she says, let go. And he says, I'm never letting go. And she pushes out of his arms. She's like, I'm flying. And she skydives down. And then it ends with Red Tornado, Tess Mercer. She's on the moon, where Watchtower is reconstructed, and then tells Clark, go, there's a tsunami. And so he goes and saves the world, and that's where it ends. And it's this amazing ending. And there's a lot of other interesting things throughout. I mean, we do get to see Jay Garrick actually leading and training the Teen Titans. So we get the White Martian, we get to see Batman and the Green Martian team up to find the White Martian, how the White Martian then joins the Teen Titans. So there's a lot of interesting things. We get to see Connor Kent and what's become of him during that thing with the purple diamond and everybody was going nuts in chaos. The best part of that was having having Supergirl, Connor Kent as Superboy, and Hank Henshaw gets a great conclusion, a sacrificial conclusion. He gets his like a bionic body back, and he comes and fights as a Superman, and these three super people fight together and win the day. And Hank sacrifices himself going into the depths of space with this purple diamond. There's just, saving the world, so that will never happen again, that weird Wrath of God Eclipso thing. So he leaves. So it's all very, very interesting, and I think it ends in a very good emotional place. So that's why I'm giving these final 3 volumes a solid A. Now, what did you think of the final 3 volumes of Smallville Season 11? Of all 9, what's your favorite? Let's talk about that in the comments. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, comic book review, theological analysis, trailer reaction, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.